It's a gift, and it's a beautiful gift you gave us, a war with Iran. It's such a great gift. Most people think of a gift, I don't know, an edible arrangement maybe. I mean, that's certainly on the cheaper end, but, certain people give people books or artwork. But a war with Iran is an amazing gift given to the world by Israel.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. And as the Middle East continues to spiral out of control, escalations at all-time highs, United States politicians and the military-industrial complex absolutely salivating at the thought of another 20-year protracted conflict in the Middle East. They just can't contain themselves right now. And while everybody is out there telling you about all the reasons why the United States should join the conflict, I'm here to tell you we already did from day one. Yes, the United States has been carrying out airstrikes along with a bunch of other different things that we've been doing. We are fully invested in this conflict already. Don't be fooled. And I'm going to explain to you exactly how and why in this video. Okay, so we're going to talk about everything from literally airstrikes being carried out by the United States to all the ways we fund and equip and arm this conflict. All right, so if you're interested in that, stick with us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Definitely helps the channel. Follow us on Patreon, grab some merch, and let's jump into this thing. All right, so first things first, how do I know that the United States has been carrying out airstrikes since day one of this conflict? Well, it's really all you have to do is understand the munitions that were required to pull off the strikes to begin with, okay? Now, I am or was a JTAC, so I understand a little bit about munitions. It was never a very good one, but when I first saw this, when the strikes carried off, the first thing I thought was, where did Israel get the munitions needed to drop bunker-busting bombs hundreds of feet underground? As far as I know, they don't have them. Well, I know they don't have them. So let's take a look at what the United States has and what was required to pull off a couple of these attacks that we've seen so far. Let's take a look at this. All right, guys, I present to you the GBU-57, the FOAB, the father of all bombs. Now, what is this thing? It is a 30,000-pound GBU guided bomb unit bunker buster. The entire purpose of this thing is to bury itself up to 200 feet in the ground and then explode, right? Obviously, how many times in the media have you been told that in Iran, their nuclear facilities are deep, deep underground? Even the strike that took out all those generals supposedly was in a bunker deep, deep, deep underground. Now, you might be saying, okay, well, this is just a munition. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. We could have sold this to Israel for them to use. Unfortunately, no. And why is that? Well, unfortunately, this munition is so big, there is only one aircraft technically one aircraft that can carry it and can deploy it, and that is the B-2 stealth bomber. Why is that important? Well, the United States is the only one that has B-2 Spirit bombers, right? So that's kind of convenient, but it gets a little bit more than that. Actually, let's take a look real quick at the GBU-57 just to get an idea of how big this thing is. So if you've ever seen a B-2, they're absolutely massive. One of the biggest aircraft we have in our military arsenal. And then look at the size of this thing next to it. Absolutely massive, right? So as it says here, the history of the MOP begins in mid-2002 when companies like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, manufacturers of the B-2, were working together to develop a bomb of this type. Now, something very, very important to also understand, if we go back about a couple months, and even this article, convenient timing, April 4th, 2025, what was happening? If you don't remember, we moved 6 of our B-2 Spirit long-range stealth bombers to the island of Diego Garcia. And as you see down here, as it states, the GBU-57 is one of the primary non-nuclear systems that America's vaunted B-2 Spirit long-range stealth bomber is designed to carry. This, incidentally, is the same B-2 stealth bomber that has been moved en masse to the U.S. Navy's major staging area in the island of Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, roughly only 3,000 miles from Iran. So, yes, isn't that convenient? When this happened 2 months ago and escalations and tensions were on the rise between the United States and Iran and Israel, that we just conveniently moved all of these bombers to Diego Garcia, which is in, as you guys can see here with the B-2 Spirit statistics, range 7,000 miles, right? Payload up to 50,000. Obviously, you know, that FOAB or that GBU 57 is the majority of it. You pretty much just carry that if you're going to carry it. But from Diego Garcia, yes, these things can easily reach out and strike Tehran. Now, again, like I told you, people will say, oh, well, you know, there's other bunker busting munitions. Most of them are 500 to 2,000 pound bombs. Here's a little chart that shows you the difference about how deep each one can penetrate. Obviously, they can't penetrate that deep. To reach these super deep areas in the nuclear facilities and where these military generals were hiding, there's only one munition that can pull that off, and it's the GBU 57, and that's what's been used. Right? So you can call that tinfoil hat, you can call that conspiracy, but to me, I think it's pretty obvious what's already going on. And when we look at it, it gets a little bit deeper than that, right? It's not just airstrikes that the United States is obviously carrying out with stealth bombers in Iran. We got to look at how we're just already funding this entire conflict, right, by U.S. aid and arms dealing and equipment, okay? So a lot of people don't really understand how this whole thing works. So what we're going to break down is how much money and military aid the United States already gives Israel and how they go about purchasing U.S. arms with that aid, okay? So it's kind of interesting, but also demonstrates how the United States is already participating in this conflict. Let's look at this. All right, we're just going to go down the line, talk about some things because I think they're relevant, they're interesting. First thing we got to look at is, well, who's the largest recipient of U.S. aid in the world? Yes, it is Israel by a massive margin, almost double anybody else. All right, now this is from 1946 to last year. As you see here, Israel, the top, over 300 billion, over 228 billion in military aid. All right, what does that look like year over year? As you see here, obviously, sort of in this 1973 region portion, you had the Yom Kippur War when Israel was invaded by Syria and Egypt. And then it's gone down to on annually about $4 billion a year. This is just in military, okay? Not economic aid. And then, of course, as of last year, we've really ramped that thing up to the roof. 12.5 billion with a B, simply military defense. And the interesting thing, military defense funding to Israel doesn't count for missile funding defense. That's a separate fund, as you can see here, 5.7 billion on top of that. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, well, what does that aid actually mean? Well, we provide obviously tons of foreign aid and money, which then Israel uses to buy arms. As you see here, Israel has been a top recipient of U.S. arms sales, $53 billion, fiscal years 1950 to 2022, not adjusted for inflation, so obviously probably way more than that. And then we go straight to imports. What percentage of Israel's total military and arms comes from the United States or purchases from the United States? Essentially 80%. So what happens is, yes, the United States pumps Israel full of foreign aid and money, which it then uses to buy arms and equipment from American military industrial complex companies. Man, isn't that a great wash of cash? The United States that your tax dollars pay for. All right, then what does Israel use all this money for? Well, as you saw, they're carrying out airstrikes with F-35 jets and all American equipment. So yes, just like in Ukraine, the United States is essentially already fighting this war on behalf of Israel when it comes to your tax dollars. All right, and then we'll look at the final one, okay? And the final one is the intelligence apparatuses. Yes, we all know how good Mossad obviously is, but Mossad and the CIA and American intelligence apparatuses all work closely together, right? And so for this attack to have been pulled off, where again, Mossad was able to gather up all those generals deep underground that were conveniently struck by a deep penetrating bunker busting munition, probably a GBU 57 or definitely one. Obviously, that's a lot of intelligence apparatuses working in tandem. Now, if you noticed, the United States has said that we have not assisted whatsoever, but unfortunately, Bibi Netanyahu came out on Fox News and told everyone, no, 100%, the United States has been involved the entire time in this process. Let's check that out.
Was the U.S. intel wrong?
The intel we got and we shared with the United States was absolutely clear. Was absolutely clear that they were working in a secret plan to weaponize the uranium. They were marching very quickly. They would achieve a test device and possibly an initial device within months and certainly less than a year. That was the intel we shared with the United States. I think we have excellent intel in Iran. I think we've proven that.
All right. So as you can see there, very clear that Israel and the United States share all intel all the time. And obviously, we could also tell this as all of the U.S. embassies in the Middle East were evacuated the day prior to the strikes going off. Obviously, we knew it was going to happen. We were a part of it. It is what it is. So nobody's shocked by that. But interesting that, he talks about here that we were days away from Iran finally getting the weapon. I got an interesting video I want to show you guys about how close they've been for almost 20 years now. Very, very interesting.
Take Iran about 12 months to enrich enough nuclear material for a single nuclear weapon.
United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken is warning that Iran is potentially just months away or less from nuclear breakpoint.
Iran is 2 months away from a nuclear weapon, and it's a victory to get them 1 year away?
Iran could be less than a month away from building a nuclear weapon.
Netanyahu has made 2 tough-talking TV appearances, saying that Iran is just months away from making a nuclear bomb.
What is important to understand is that you have to dismantle the entire terror empire, and especially before its main practitioners, the terror states of Iran and Iraq, acquire nuclear weapons. And this, I think, has been a wake-up call from hell. It is telling us you have the power now to act.
All right, so reality is, guys, yes, the United States is already deeply involved, both kinetically and through, funding and equipping the conflict. Not shocker at all. You guys, I'm sure this not having the wool pulled over your eyes at all at this point. What do they really want? They want regime change, okay? This is going to be the 7th one in 20 years. They want it bad, and I say that in no way will I ever support the idea of American troop boots on the ground being used to facilitate this regime change, okay? I'm not a proponent of letting Iran have a nuclear weapon at all, but yeah, this is really not our conflict, and no matter how you splice it, no boots on the ground, no American troops, no more American troops losing their lives in the Middle East. We've already paid that cost for no reason over and over again for the last 20 years. All right, so going forward, as you're watching this conflict, every time you guys hear that Israel was able to strike deep, hundreds of feet into the ground, to hit some nuclear facility, understand that was not Israel. That was the United States with the FOAB, the big boy, the GBU 57. All right, guys, hope you found that interesting. Catch you on the next one. We'll keep covering this as more comes out.